You see that 12 ring I just shot with my PSE bow? You want a PSE bow? I'll tell you what, I'll give you a PSE bow. All you gotta do is like, subscribe, and comment on the channel. If you do that, we're gonna give one away. And if you do that, you're entered to win. Simple as that. Like, subscribe, and comment, guys. Well, guys, I don't know how I want to put this one. There's a tool that people are using that I think they rely too heavily on. Now, we've talked about this with trail cameras. We talked about this with a couple other things. I love using trail cameras, and it's not trail camera. That's not the gimmick here that we're going to talk about. And to a certain extent, maybe it's not even a gimmick because it is a tool you could use. But I think what happens with a lot of these tools is we over-rely on them. We depend everything on these you know, whatever these things are. And so trail cameras, I've said before that I think trail cameras a lot of times are only catching about 30% of that movement. You know, unless you have corn down, unless you have bait down in front of the camera and giving the deer a 100% reason to walk in front of that camera, who's to say that the deer don't use the trail behind the trail that you have, you know, your camera on? Who's to say the deer doesn't feed into that portion of the food plot that night? Unless you have mineral down or a reason for those deer to come in front of that camera, I think sometimes, you know, you're just not catching a lot of the movement. And what we do is we just over rely on that. We say, he's not on camera, he's not there, I'm not going hunting, not wasting my time. And for you know, conversation's sake, I don't even care if I get a nighttime picture. If I know he's there, I'm going in, I'm figuring out how to kill him because you know, I've done my preseason scouting. I know where the buck bedding is nearby, and I'm just going in and hunting strategically. He could have been there in daylight, but been 10 feet behind you. But the other gimmick or the other tool that I think gets overused is these hunting apps, okay? And I'm only talking about certain hunting apps. There's certain mapping apps that I love using. I think you should use them. I can see topographical features. I can see wind direction. I can see all these cool things, and those are definitely usable. You can drop waypoints. You know, I have thousands of waypoints in some of these, literally thousands, and I would never remember all those. So those apps, I believe, are useful. But the apps that tell you when to hunt, I think, are kind of BS sometimes. And you know, maybe it's not even the app's fault. Maybe it's more so the user's fault. And I guess I'd almost lean that way. So these apps that predict movement, they predict when you should hunt, when it's a good day, when it's a bad day. I brought this up in other videos, and I know for a fact that I've killed probably about 70 to 80+% of my bucks on warm fronts. How many of those apps would tell you to hunt on a warm front? Now, there might be a time and a place in which it's good conditions, but it's very, very rare. And what it comes down to is if you do enough scouting, if you have enough woodsmanship, if you spend enough time in the woods where you can understand certain concepts and why deer do what they do in certain parts of the country, you can put those puzzle pieces together to find those deer, even on warm fronts, okay? Because the deer don't just disappear when it's warm. They don't just vanish when it gets hot. Do they move less? Do they move more? I can't say yes or no either way, honestly, and most people would say cold front's always better. There's some research that has recently come out that might say otherwise, no matter what we're seeing. But, you know, we're all spending a lot of time in the field. It's something that we all see, so I'm not going to get into that. Regardless, these apps tell you when to hunt. Well, here's the thing these apps don't know. They don't know your property. It's a very generic statement or piece of advice to tell you to not hunt or hunt your property. Sometimes they're right and they can be useful, they can be helpful, but so they are a tool. You should keep them in your arsenal, but never bank on them, similar to trail cameras. So they wait on high barometric pressure and all these other things, but here's the thing. If you scouted well enough, if you have your cameras in good enough spots where you are catching some of that movement and maybe good enough movement to where you know where these bucks are spending some time, if you know where that buck is, go in and kill him. Simple as that. Don't wait for an app to tell you to go in, especially if that app says, well, you're not getting good weather for 5 days. So if you got a buck on your property, you only got 40 acres, you only got 20 acres, you ain't got a lot of time to waste. You kind of got to go in when you got to go in. If he's there, he's there. Just because it's warm doesn't mean he's invisible. So what I guess I would recommend that you do is if you are using these apps, use them. Use them as a tool. But don't rely on them, because I think that's what we do in this era of technology. We bank everything off of, you know, what is the trail camera saying? What is the app telling me to do? These trail cameras are covering minimal percentage amounts of your property, unless you have a ton of them, and I mean a ton of them. You're not catching everything. You're not catching every deer trail. And even if you have them on every single deer trail, who knows if the deer just walks behind it that day. I've seen mature bucks do it, and drop something in the comments if you've seen the same thing. I've seen mature bucks purposely walk behind cameras. But regardless, these are all tools that we should use, but never bank on. So next time your app tells you, hey, stay out, you know, conditions are wrong, but you have reasons to believe otherwise why you might have a good chance at killing that deer that day, go in there and get after it. I've killed deer in 93 degrees, 97 degrees, 88 degrees. I've killed bucks on the warmest day of a front in late October. The point is that these deer are there, and if you put the time in, the woodsmanship and but scouting time in to understand properties and understand different, you know, terrain features and all these other variables that come into play, then you can put yourself in a better position to get these deer killed without having to worry about what an app is telling you to do. So if you guys like these tips, you like these you know, these types of videos, the food plotting videos, if you like buck bedding videos, we got it all. So if you're a fan of any of that stuff, like and subscribe. We're always doing giveaways. So even if you don't love the content, we're always doing giveaways. So if you're subscribed, you're entered to win in our giveaway. And it might be a bow, it might be a trail camera, it might be something really cool. So if you're interested in free stuff, like and subscribe.